welcome to our show. Welcome to our show.
Welcome to the show. This is Let's Get Serious. This is kind of a thing we've been doing on Fridays. One of the shows that I do. Damien was on another. This one is a little bit more fun than the other shows. The other shows are on that ish, and I guess issue X. Those are more focused on political discussions. These ones get political, but we also do fun stuff like trivia, and sometimes we read scripts.
I was gonna say sometimes there's politics here too.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's like at least a third or half, or maybe even more. But there's other stuff sprinkled in.
And occasional hurricanes.
Speaking of which, are folks down to do a little bit of Lean on Me tonight? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay.
Lean on Me. What is that?
We're singing?
No.
Singing a song?
No, the movie. Sometimes we break out a little bit of a script and
ain't nobody gonna hear. Ain't nobody
some
wanna hear
parts
that.
and read parts of.
Blake's a great singer, so I thought I don't know. Is this an acapella team we got going on here?
Yeah.
If it would, I would have to excuse myself because no one wants that pain.
I actually participated in an worldwide acapella version of "Lean on Me" that was yeah.
A worldwide acapella version?
Kind of. Well, it was a friend of mine from college who has this organization whose goal is just to spread cheer and goodwill throughout the world. And he asked me if I would participate in this because shortly after Bill Withers passed away. So I said, all right.
So this was recently. Yeah,
and I'm in it for 2 seconds. But it's like a 4-minute long video. I can share it in the Facebook chat, at some point if anybody's interested in seeing it. I posted it on my page when it came out, but I'm in it for literally 2 seconds. But it's a really lovely because it's a wide variety of people around the world singing it. So it's really lovely.
Dozens or more of people?
More, yeah, dozens and more, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's really sweet.
I was forced to do it one time at the beginning of this I guess you would call it a progressive meeting that we had, I guess you might call it an assembly of sorts for my job. It's not, when I say forced, it's not like I don't like the song. It's just that it's not what I would have picked for myself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great song. Yeah. Word.
Yeah, maybe a little later on. I think we should wait at least for Cynthia.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we probably usually start with the political stuff and then maybe get a little goofy later or something.
Yeah.
Sounds good with me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go put the parrot to bed, so I will be back in just a second. Okay.
He's lovely, by the way.
Good night, everyone. Oh, thank you.
He's lovely, real colorful.
Thank you.
And she doesn't like other women.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Frozen.
They have a mean streak in them.
No, it was just an unexpected situation.
Sure.
No, she's got a mean streak. Don't lie. She's definitely got a mean streak in her.
She's possessive. She's
bitten Sam several times. We've seen it.
Well, that's true too. No, we're talking about the bird, not a student. But do you think a student bit me?
All right, I can hear you all from my room, so I know you all are talking about her. So I would just like to defend her for a second and say,
No, I'm laughing because Misha heard me say that Scarlett was possessive, and he thought, but he didn't hear me. I said she, not Scarlett. So he thought that, like, yeah, he thought that I was talking about a student biting me.
Oh, that's funny. A student biting you. Yes, Scarlett is a wild bird, and she can be aggressive and territorial. However, she is also is very affectionate. She goes back and forth. She has mood swings. She's also very affectionate, and she can be and she is really social and likes to meet new people. And it really just depends on how she.
Well, parrots are very smart, so all of that fits under the profile.
Yeah, she kind of sounds a little bit like Tupac. You know, kind of like very smart, but you know, if you rub her the wrong way, she'll fuck you up, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, like, just listen to the way she talks.
Yeah, that sounds like hit 'em up to me. Wild bird.
Yeah, she's kind of she's a bit of a gangster. Yeah.
Yep.
So all I'm seeing is we're the beard side, and you're the non-beard side over here on the left.
Oh well, that's funny because.
Go ahead, Defilarius.
Oh no, I was just saying that's funny because on my screen, the beards form a triangle in the middle.
Oh,
and then Emily,
the beard power.
Yeah, and then Emily and Sam flank us on the left and right.
Gotcha.
So we're the bread?
Yeah, I guess so. Yep.
All right.
Yep, I guess that would make us the meat then. Which I don't know how I feel about that, but
I have been described as meat before. I'm okay with it.
We're commodifying human life. Be careful, you guys.
All right.
Do you eat meat, Damien? Are you a meat eater?
Oh, I've eaten chicken and fish a bit. I stopped eating red meat years ago. Okay. For the most part, plant-based. Yeah. Plant-based alternatives have been very healthy. I've been using a lot of pea protein replacements with things. I even make my own sweet potato pea protein patties, and I mix in as many alternative protein sources as possible. I feel that diversifying the protein portfolio in general is good. Whether you're a meat eater or not, you should just get as many different sources of protein as you can.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and really, I always, I'm a vegan myself. I kind of just profiled you as maybe someone who might be plant-based. I don't know if you get that a lot. I don't know if that's me being, just profiling or just...
No, I can identify with plant-based. I mean, actually, my little screen background is a plant. I'm basically made of a tree, sort of, right now. But, for the most part, yeah, I think that it's fun finding alternatives to the protein thing. And I spent a long time in my early life eating a lot of dense proteins. So, I mean, you could say plant-based, but I can't say vegan necessarily. Honey is something I still incorporate, although maple syrup is another great alternative to that.
Sure.
And
you ever try agave?
I have agave, right? Another beautiful alternatives, pollinated by bats, though in some cases pollinated by bats. So it gets kind of an interesting thing when we talk about the ethics of veganism, and that's definitely a cool subject to get serious about on maybe another event. But I agree with the ethics of it, and I think that there's a lot of corporate sponsorships behind some of the meat industry that could stand to be examined a little more closely.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
I would say I'm a pretty typical Cuban, so unfortunately I'm a pretty big meat eater, sadly. Except I don't eat pork products because that's horrible for my stomach. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And that's weird because Cubans are known for doing the pork every Christmas. We bury it in the ground and do it like a luau style meal. But I could never eat it. It would destroy me. So.
Okay.
And I tend to avoid red meat like Damien, but I'm not as healthy as Damien.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a vegan since about 2001 or so, 2000. I kind of find that I mean, Americans specifically, but I kind of find in general people freak out about protein too much. You know, I think like.
You mean about lack thereof?
Yeah, yeah. I think people are like kind of obsessed. You know, it's the first thing they always ask a vegan is like, where do you get your protein from? But I kind of find people kind of focus on protein a bit too much. I mean, maybe unless you're like doing like some serious bodybuilding, you know, I don't think it's
Yeah.
as necessary. Not that I don't get plenty of protein, or not that most vegans
But you're not going
don't.
to die.
No, I get plenty of protein, but I'm saying even if I didn't, it wouldn't be as serious as people make it. It's just,
That's
this
what I
whole
mean. Like, people act like you're going to die.
this whole like eating meat with like every single meal, or like having to eat veggie protein with like every meal. I kind of find that like for me, I've been feeling good just like snacking on like raw veggies all day, like in between my actual meals. I've just been eating a lot of like carrots, celery, I mix some radishes in there, and like I've kind of found
that's the one thing I don't like, Flavius, is radishes. I refuse to eat radishes.
Well, they've got this what is it, the sharp taste to them you don't like?
Yes,
like,
that's the problem for me. It's again a stomach problem.
Oh,
Well,
okay, the stomach problem.
They're too
Okay.
spicy, maybe.
Yeah, that might be it
that.
too. That might be it too. But Flavius, I wanted to ask you now: did you start because of the moral implications of veganism?
That's a great question. So originally, what I did, I was working a telemarketing gig. I kind of got into environmentalism and like my non-profit canvassing world gig around the same time that I got into veganism. So what I did was I just kind of, well, first of all, I kind of got into like religious / spiritual thing where I was studying with a Hebrew Israelite group, and so I kind of got away from everything from pork to like a lot of the seafoods and stuff like that at the same time. But I was also experimenting anyway, just with my health. We would have this, like, we were in this building, and I would go on lunch break to this nice, kitchen kind of place that had buffet style soups and like all types of, everything you could imagine. And they had this like rotisserie chicken that was like wonderful to eat, but it was really oily, and I just like would get really sleepy before going back to work. And so like in addition to the religious stuff, I just kind of like started experimenting with giving up meats one by one and seeing how I felt. And every time I gave up another one, I felt good. And so at one point, I had heard that some people do this like eating beef like once a month thing. So I got into that. But then I didn't like how I felt like the once a month that I ate it. And then like I started thinking about that whole, it takes like a month to digest, beef thing.
Right.
Just beef?
Yeah. And that kind of disgusted me. So I kind of got out of that. And then the chicken was probably like the hardest meat for me to give up, to be honest. I kind of salivated over chicken wings and stuff, seeing other people eat them. But, I like got out of that, and, I was like,
slowly but surely you worked your way out.
I worked my way out, and by the time 2000 or 2001 hit, I was a vegetarian, and I liked how I felt, and I was kind of getting into it for the animals at that point too. I kind of started developing this philosophy that if I can survive without killing, that's like the ethical thing to do. I kind of developed this philosophy that if I was on some kind of island where, there's hardly any vegetation and the only way to really survive is to eat fish or like eat some kind of animal, that I would do that. And so, by that time I had given up fish as well. But when I started my canvassing job at Citizens Campaign for the Environment, I met what would be a lifelong friend and musical collaborator of mine, Andy Morrison, who took me on a training session one day, as we're like walking door to door. What's that?
Who also brought you me and Sam?
Yes, yep. That's also how we met. Later on, an iteration later, I would meet you guys through Andy Morrison, and that was through a Nightbird connection, another great environmental / consumer advocacy outfit. But basically, he taught me the difference between veganism and vegetarianism, and he kind of explained to me about the exploitation for milk and all the dairy products and stuff like that, and described to me some disgusting things about milk. And so literally I had one more regular bowl of cereal after that discussion, and I literally couldn't stomach the idea of drinking milk anymore. And I just kind of transitioned over to veganism, and would end up only wearing leather if it was thrift or something like that. And
what about pleather?
Yeah, I mean,
well, many couches die for pleather, so you know what they say.
Yeah, leather is I guess it's not something I would seek out, but I guess if it was, I've probably had something made out of it before. But yeah, that was kind of my journey into veganism. But to answer your question, it started out as kind of a health interest project, and then definitely ended up much stronger for the love of animals and life, and also the environment, also all the environmental implications.
You sound like you absorbed a lot of the same lessons that I read in a book called The Bloodless Revolution. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Very famous.
That sounds familiar. Ooh, who wrote it?
I can't remember. It's been years. I still lived in Florida at this point, but it was a fascinating look at basically vegetarianism, then veganism throughout the years. Both strains, and how it's steadily but surely growing, not fading away like the people declared it would do.
Right. That's cool.
I definitely suggest the book for you. I think you would gain a lot from it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, check it out. It's definitely been interesting because I've seen some of my cousins go from ridiculing me to some interest in being plant-based over the years. And some of it has been because of a documentary called What the Health. That was a big one that came out on Netflix a few years ago, and it had all these racial, socioeconomic implications and stuff to it, and a bunch of interesting angles that folks really took to. So I kind of took a lesson from that, and I was like, maybe that's the way to go, is very smart entertainment, educational visual routes where people can see different angles.
Yeah, because people have to be exposed to the ideas before they can learn anything, on their own.
Yeah, and preaching doesn't necessarily work. I mean, for some generations, the PETA style videos of seeing the torture of animals worked. For some people, they were pretty turned off by that. So this was a new generational twist on
Sure.
information straight up, and maybe people felt less manipulated emotionally and more captivated, visually and stimulated intellectually by it. So
yeah, I definitely believe that's the way to convince people of your point of view. In any case, I like I told you, Flavius, I work in politics, and
Right.
the worst you could do is to browbeat somebody into your opinion, because they're only maybe agreeing with you to shut you the hell up.
Right, but at the same time in politics, the idea of manipulation, unfortunately, has been very successful.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so they found interesting ways to do it, but unfortunately, not. They've not been very honest
No.
or
No.
earnest in the approaches. They've been pretty
No,
successful.
and I'm willing. I no longer work in that field, so I'm willing to talk about it on all the things I've seen. So
Okay. What aspects of politics were you involved in? Were you like campaign manager?
I was an advisor. I was an economic advisor, and I was also a campaign manager
Oh, okay.
for economic candidates mostly.
Economic candidates. What does that mean?
How would you describe economic candidates?
Candidates that base their a good example is like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders describes most of his philosophies based on economics.
Okay.
But a lot of right wingers do too. So I had clients on both sides of the aisle,
Yeah. What was the
but
guy
they
with the
tended to
big
be
ears? Big
which one?
ears. Long ago, skinny guy, rich. Perot was Ross
Perot,
Perot.
yes, that was my first candidate that I advocated for. I was
Oh,
a
okay.
Republican at that time.
Oh, okay. I was going to say what was interesting, speaking of like manipulation, I feel like, the whole Republican uh, Democrat divide has just gotten so different over the years. I
Mhm.
feel like there was a time when Republicans and Democrats could sit down together and not disagree so much.
And not scream at each other?
Yeah.
Well, I have a few answers for that because I knew some of the older guys in the business when I
Mhm.
first got in,
Yeah.
and what they told me, back in the '60s and '70s, most of the politicians that were out of state and federal level, they were people that had come from fighting multiple wars, and so they may not have had a lot of stuff in common in terms of their philosophical divide, but they could at least go. You remember when we were in this godforsaken hellhole, and we both managed to get out? Let's see if we
Okay.
can work on something like that again.
Okay. So common enemy, common
Common
experiences.
common experiences are key.
Right.
A lot of things I think we're
Communal
missing
equity.
because I'm sorry, Damien. What?
Just as common experiences coincides with communal equity. So as
Absolutely.
far as an economic candidate goes, communal equity would be a great angle that I don't really see many people take because it's not very exciting for the most part.
Not very understood, Damien.
Right.
You
Exactly.
mean communal equity in the sense that Bernie Sanders talks about like equity, or
Well, he gets kind of bigger picture with a lot of stuff. I mean, my favorite thing is when he's talking about the banks and he's talking about the bailouts and he's looking at the civil duty that kind of comes along with that, because that's big community stuff. That's national community stuff. I'm thinking more along the lines of like your local community stuff. And this starts with the simple things, like we see a lot of uh, community gardening projects pick up, and that's a really simple thing with a foot in the door to some communal equity where people share, a need for resources and also stewardship with nature. And then other communal equity programs could be like recycling to reduce and reuse the material that's available to us instead of just trying to cart it off and process it into another big factory, big material type industry, where we can kind of put our heads together and see like what we can do as a community to kind of create these developments. And again, it's difficult. It takes a lot of creative problem solving, and it's not the most exciting progressive thing sometimes. I mean, even a bicycle path can create communal equity because now a bicycle path in your town has brought the attention of bicyclists from other towns. And when they come to that bicycle path that your town carved out or set up, whether it was between some property lines or between some whatever little bit of nature was preserved, this bicycle path now provides a way for other towns to bring some of their equity into your community. Even something simple like a lemonade stand. And now this is getting a little edgy because now you're talking about some regulations on selling food and how that's administered. But something simple like that ends up being a foot into a door that doesn't have to close. And that's what I see that we look at in a lot of communities is closed doors. That these doors have been closed, shut, and locked. And a lot of it comes down to licensing, registration complications, and administrative details that don't know what it's like to be in the field, in the communities. They just know how to administer and engineer some of these difficulties too. Not really solutions, but more problems in some cases.
What's the metaphor? Is the lemonade stand a metaphor, or are you just saying like this is something that like it's like a simple simple commerce that doesn't need any regulation? Or
right, it's a simple commerce, but it's funny that you could see kind of the poetry there when you say lemonade stand, because at one point I was even joking with a friend on a walk, like, you know what, civil disobedient lemonade stands, everyone could have them. And it's civilly disobedient, like, go ahead, shut my lemonade stand down, I'll pack up as soon as you tell me it's wrong. But until you tell me it's wrong, I'm none the wiser, because there is no exact penal code, there is no exact punishment for it. If I proceed beyond being told not to do it, and now I'm entering a new realm of civil disobedience, I could face a fine, I could face charges and a repeat offense too. But at a certain point, getting that foot in the door and creating that sense of communal equity, like maybe we all just take turns doing the lemonade stand. You know, I get shut down, my neighbor does it after they leave, you know, and now we've just passed the torch on some communal equity where we can even teach kids about business and about working. I mean, I remember being a kid, having a lemonade stand, collecting change from people just pulling over off the side of the road from other communities, and my mom teaching me about giving back, you know, understanding like, you know, hey, look, this is our profit, this is what we paid for. You know, I got to be introduced to a small business model thanks to my mom's great parenting. So I just feel like that's lost, and that's a big part of family values that ties into communal equity. And another big issue here is that these are complicated problems that have very simple solutions, but people oftentimes don't want to settle for a simple solution. They want it to be hard. They want it to be difficult in some cases. And I feel like that's another part of this human condition that we're kind of facing here in politics when we talk about economic candidates, which is really a great common factor. You know, it's saying like these are common things that we all deal with across the board. It's a bipartisan thing. And, you know, this ties back into environmental issues too. A lot of our economy, most if not all, comes from the environment at some point or another. And I think that's another thing overlooked. So from bicycle paths to lemonade stands, we can see there's a little bit of something we could do in the communal equity department that is being discussed.
Well, I think a lot of people where their common ground with, say, somebody from the other side, if they're standing on one side or the other of the imaginary fence, is their children. Everybody will have children or nephews or nieces or what have you, and that common need for the children to be safe, for the children to be well educated, and for the children to be healthy, it can bring a lot of people together that you would have never sat together otherwise. And I've seen it.
Just a quick anecdote on that, especially for Samuel and Emily, the canvassers in the room. Or actually, Damien, you're a canvasser too, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I had a moment in like one of these suburbs where I was canvassing, and I hit up a lemonade stand, you know, earlier in the day. The folks weren't home, and you know, later on, the folks were home. I spoke to the father, and he kind of like brushed me off kind of quickly. And then as I was walking away, his little girl like said, "Daddy, Daddy," and like told him, you know, that I had frequented her lemonade stand earlier, and he ended up telling me to come back and talk to me, and, you know, said that I was nice to his daughter, and I think ended up giving me like a nice, you know, like a $60 contribution or something.
Oh,
So
I had a yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. I had actually had a similar experience once where you know, a mom answered, a woman answered the door, and, you know, I told her that I was working for NYPIRG and the campaign that we were working on, it was the anti-mercury campaign.
okay.
And you know, she was telling me, she said she was very interested, but she did not make any financial decisions without talking to her husband first. It had to be something they both agreed on. And even though I was persistent, like that was really her stance at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I accepted it and I said, all right, fine. So as I'm about to, so literally before I could even turn around though, her little boy walked up right next to her. He must've been like 6 or 7. And he asked her who I was. And she told me, and she told him that I was trying to help the environment, and that she hoped that when he grew up, that he would turn out to be like me. And it was so incredibly sweet. So I started talking to him because he was asking me all these questions about who I was and what I was doing there. And I was telling him I was there to help the environment. And so I was talking to her. I was talking to, this young boy for like a minute, and the mom could see that I was a real person, and that I was really and I was just how kind I was being, of course, to her kid too. And she goes, hang on, let me get my checkbook. So
there's an old statement, Samuel, that says the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world.
Speaking of ruling the world,
it's really sweet. But it was a very sweet moment. Sorry, Flavia. But it was a very sweet moment. And then just to be a little humorous, when I started at NIPERG, my first day on my OBS day, it was like, no, Emily, no.
Okay.
No. So it was, I remember the meeting, like the sit down was like at 1 p.m. and I was like, I'm really hungry. Can I bring out my lunch? And they're like, sure. So I unwrap my tuna salad sandwich and start eating it. And then they start talking about how their campaign is about there's too much mercury in tuna. And I'm literally like,
Did you finish the sandwich?
I did. I was really hungry. However, I did not have tuna again for a while after that day.
Yeah, I hear you.
But that was a really special place and a really special time, and I would not have met any of you actually if I hadn't been there. So, but
Along with your canvassing career. With
me?
Yeah.
I was there for 3 years on and off.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the only place I ever canvassed. But
okay.
But yeah,
3 summers.
3 summers and almost through to the winter on a couple occasions.
Okay.
Yeah, I made it through to March at one point. We as all canvassers do, we have several amusing stories. But
remember who you observed
I want to
with?
thank Chris Michaels.
Oh, okay, cool.
Do you remember her?
I sure do.
Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I want to thank you for bringing up that story about the child, because that was, it's always those wonderful moments that you have with kids that like Raul said, like their hand that rocks the cradle. So
yeah, definitely. I wanted to introduce Ish to, I think, Raul. You're friends with Ish now on Facebook, maybe?
Yes. No, maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I will be though by the end of the night.
Okay. So yeah, you two met recently through Joey.
You joined Comic Sense.
Yes. We've been talking back and forth on Comic Sense.
Yes. I appreciate you joining, by the way. It's good to meet you.
Oh, no problem. Joey said join this group, and I was like, okay, sure. I'm a super geek. I love comics.
Oh man, I definitely appreciate it. Pretty awesome. Yeah, I've seen you on there. I remember, you guys were, obviously it was off topic, but you guys were talking about something else, and then someone asked about your Hawkeye. I think you had a Hawkeye avatar, or you might have asked someone. And
I asked somebody about their Hawkeye avatar, and because I thought it was the West Coast Avengers one. I mean, this is really nerdy. I don't know if the rest of the class is ready for this.
Listen, I'm nerdy, so
yeah, me too.
I created a Facebook group called Comic Sense. So
that's true.
Speaking of which,
has anyone checked out the
Deathstroke?
I saw that movie, Deathstroke, the one that you pointed out, Flavius, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, the animated one, right?
Yeah.
The one that just came out. Yeah. I was confused.
Yeah,
I was confused because it was set up like it looked like it said episode 1.
Yeah, it did. I don't know. Maybe it was just their excitement of getting it online. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
To be honest
maybe
with
they were hopeful that they were going to turn it into something different.
Everybody dreams of a bigger dream, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Blade, you could always post on it in Comic Sense.
I did actually.
Okay, I didn't see that post.
Yep, I did. I said the exact same thing I just said about it being a dope movie, but I was confused about whether it was a series or not.
I have to look for it. I've been out of touch. I've actually been toiling over whether or not I should honor somebody who we laid to rest today in Comic Sense, because he was a member of Comic Sense as well.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I was at his funeral today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I haven't said anything about it on, you know, line or on Comic Sense, you know, but he died on my birthday, the 29th.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you know, such is life, you know, but he was an awesome guy, and we buried him today. You know, that's where I was at most of the day. But he was a member of Comic Sense. So it was, you know, I've been kind of toiling over whether or not, you know, his sister is a member, and, you know, she's taking it pretty hard as well. But I just been, you know, he was a member, you know, he was active. He always talked about, like, you know, whenever we had posts about, you know, certain TV series or movies, or, you know, he was big on, you know, he was excited for this New Mutants movie. And I've just kind of been toiling over whether I should just, you know, mention it in Comic Sense and kind of just give him a tribute there as well. You know what I mean? As, you know, he was a member. It's just something that I'm kind of toiling back and forth over. Like, shouldn't I?
Yeah,
I just want to
run it by his sister first, though.
Yeah, his brother and I are very close, but his sister is actually a member of the group. So that's the one thing I definitely want to do, is get her permission, you know what I mean? Or at least her blessing in those regards, you know.
Maybe there's a way to bring people together, like do one of those watch things people do together, like in honor of him, or like something that was like a favorite or something.
I'm definitely going to change the cover photo to a Superman, you know, oriented cover photo as a tribute to him, because, you know, Superman was his dude.
Yeah.
Or Ish, you could also dedicate your review of New Mutants to him. That might be a very subtle way of kind of thanking him for his.
That's actually an excellent idea. That's awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Oh,
that's
you're
an
welcome.
Awesome idea.
Is that going to be a written review or like a YouTube review?
I think because it's more personal, I'll write that review.
Okay.
Just because it's more personal.
Right.
You know, you tap into some things when you're sitting down writing.
Sure.
You know, you kind of tap into some things. So I think that's the route that I'm going to go. I normally don't write the reviews on Comic Sense, as you know, Flav.
Yeah.
I have somebody that does that, but she probably won't watch the New Mutants film. I have someone that I have that reviews indie comics, specifically indie comics. She writes indie reviews.
Kind of like Ghost World and things like that?
Like, you know, she's reviewed Monstrous.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
She's done, she has a Monstrous review coming up. She does, I've gotten her the all 4 of the trade paperbacks so that she could prepare to do another Monstrous review, but she's done Philadelphia, she's done Folklords, you know, a couple, you know, so my goal is, just because, you know, most people, especially casual fans, are just either Marvel, DC people. Right. So I figured with the reviews, I'd go indie books to give shine and put spotlight on indie stuff, and, you know, just kind of give people an idea of what's out there outside of just the mainstream stuff, which is pretty much almost the central focus of Comic Sense.
To be honest, my favorite imprint from one of the big titles, and I loved almost every single title they brought out, was Vertigo from DC. So I have a big indie background. Even though I'm a huge, you know, super nerd, I love the indie stuff too.
Yeah, Vertigo is a very big. I mean, you know, you got the Sandman television series about to drop on Netflix.
Absolutely.
Which,
and if you've been watching American Gods, they can do Neil Gaiman stuff amazingly well.
Yes, not everything Vertigo translates though, right? Like his Preacher, the television show Preacher wasn't great.
No, you're right. It was kind of a disappointment, but It is what it is. Some hit, some don't.
I'd almost rather see Death first. I know you got to do Sandman first, but I'm just more. Death has always been a more interesting character to me. You know, I like Sandman, but I love like High Cost of Living. We're talking critically acclaimed stuff there.
Of
you know
course,
what I mean?
of course. I can't help every time somebody mentions death in a sentence. I can't help all the Tori Amos concerts I went to as a kid.
Yeah, Tori Amos is awesome.
Yes, she was the basis for Death. So I love that. I absolutely love that.
Tori
Would she
Amos
talk
was
about
the
death?
basis for Death?
Yes.
So would she talk about death a lot?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't. But
who wrote this comic that based Death on Tori Amos?
Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman. Also, Stardust, American Gods. What am I forgetting? There's so much stuff he's written.
Did he have a relationship with her and it went bad or something?
That's the rumor, but everybody stays away from that when they're interviewing either of them.
You know what's interesting is I just got into a debate with someone who loves Neil Gaiman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Loves him, but she never read his comics.
Oh, really?
And she kind of got frustrated with me because I'm like, well, you love Neil Gaiman because he wrote comics. She's like, no. I'm like, listen, he writes novels because he carved his niche in the writing world as a comic writer. Like he created this character named Sandman. She's like, I know Sandman because she knows the novels, which is cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like and I was telling her like I like Neil Gaiman. I can't really get into his novels. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person, and I'll tell you exactly. I can guess exactly your issue. His endings are poopy. They're not good. Right. But his prose is beautiful.
Phenomenal.
Neverwhere is the best, strongest ending he's had in any of his novels.
It's so great. But then, like, I couldn't read the American Gods novels. I couldn't read Nuncy Boys. Like, I tried. I can't even read Sandman as a novel. You know,
his prose is absolutely probably one of the best in the business alive today. But his endings are, it's like Stephen King. Like you meander towards the end, and it doesn't
stick the landing.
He doesn't stick the landing, sadly. And I know I'm probably putting my life on the line here by saying that in public, but because he has rabid fans, absolutely rabid fans.
Yeah, he does. She was mad. I said, there are some writers from his clique that outshine him. She's like, no, and I'm like, well, Warren Ellis. She's like, no way. I'm like, listen. The thing about Neil Gaiman as a comic writer is, he's very, 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 like, if you read Neil Gaiman stuff, it's great. When he ventures out into other things in the comic realm, like Eternals, for instance, not that anyone could ever write a good Eternals book, but like Eternals, it wasn't good. Yeah,
it wasn't good. It was the Eternals is never going to be a property that attracts anybody, that can write them half a damn, because it's kind of like the Jack Kennedy Camelot story with like weird sci-fi 1920s superpowers.
Yeah, Kirby was on something.
Yeah, Kirby was definitely a traveler. I'll tell you that right now.
He was on something. And it's like, I gave her other examples. I'm like, Warren Ellis and Garth Ennis can kind of write anything.
Yes.
Like they can go write X-Men. And then, go back to writing like some crime noir, you know what I mean? And
yes.
And Neil Gaiman I think he has to be really passionate about what he's writing, which means it has to come from his own brain.
Do you know who discovered Neil Gaiman?
I don't.
Do you know the story? It was Alan Moore when Neil Gaiman was writing for a local paper. This is the truth. Alan Moore wrote him and said, you know what? You need to start writing comic books. And he's like, no, I'm a serious journalist. Can you imagine if he hadn't taken him up on that offer?
For those of you who may not know, Alan Moore is the father of the Watchmen.
Okay.
Yeah. And V for Vendetta. Most
V for Vendetta as well.
I think you have to worry about the viewers more than you have to worry about me not knowing who he is.
Well, that makes sense. Well, thank you for clarifying it for me anyway. And incidentally, while you were all talking, I just looked up Neil Gaiman, to get some more info because I found out that he and Tori Amos are actually very close friends. So
they are very close friends.
Right. So what I said was out of like ignorance and like not knowing anything about their history. So I'm glad that I went and educated myself and cleared that up because that would have been otherwise been really weird.
You'll also discover that Death is a pretty brilliant character.
It is. She is probably one of the most rounded characters that Neil has ever created, and that the comic book scene was lucky enough to have in the early '90s.
Yes.
Hey, just a 30-second warning. We're switching gears in about 30 seconds. We're doing kind of an hour-to-hour format.
All right.
It's just going to help us like format these, chop the shows.
So, fun fact: before the 30 seconds are up, apparently his daughter, Neil Gaiman's daughter, was in a college class with me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But like she was totally quiet. And it was an English class too, but she was totally quiet about who he was because she didn't like want a big deal made out of it. But people figured it out because, you know,
Be back in just a second.
Etc.
Cool.
I'll be
All
back
right,
in
so
a second.
we're switching gears now. I'm going to stop and then restart.